Do you ever get shaky knees or feel a little bit sick when you need to public speak or maybe perform in front of people? Well, there are actually scientific reasons for why these physiological symptoms appear when we get stage fright. In this clip from a full-length interview, Dr. Kristina Driskill, performance anxiety expert, breaks down all of these physiological symptoms that are associated with performance anxiety and why they appear.
So, how then does performance anxiety manifest? I know that physically, the majority of people said shaky voice, shaky legs, weaker sound, some sort of shakiness in
Yeah.
And then secondary, people running out of breath, like the throat closing, dry mouth, heart racing, sweaty hands, cracking. And then I also thought it was interesting, avoiding eye contact was something that I didn't think about, but is something that we kind of do instinctively. So how and why do these manifest? And how is that part of performance anxiety?
The physiological symptoms I find to be fascinating. So when we have nervous, shaky hands, shaky knees, shaky limbs, stuff like this, what's actually happening is that there's been some sort of a trigger response. There's been some sort of an awareness factor in the brain that tells us we are about to enter or we are in a situation that could be potentially life-threatening, even though it's totally not. There's, like I said, that primal coding in our DNA makes us feel like, even if we're just standing in front of somebody or just saying hello and saying our name in a group, that somehow is linked to that acceptance, approval, survival. So once that trigger has gone off, right? Once the amygdala in the brain has been like, danger, right? And sends this little signal off to us, depending on the person, because some people have a stronger primal link to that than others. Mine's really strong. Some people just notice it, and they may get a little nervous, but they don't have nearly that's why some people get, like really strong symptoms. Sometimes some people don't get them at all. And it really deals with how strong that primal link is. And when it comes to the shaking of the limbs, this is directly related to the body preparing to take off. People always say fight or flight. And when they think about it like that, it makes you think in your brain that like the first instinct is to fight. And then if that doesn't work, you should run away. And that's not what happens at all. There's actually 4 levels that happen. And the first is freeze. If you've ever been in the woods and you're walking in the woods and you hear a noise, some sort of crackling of something, that something's being stepped on or something rustling in the trees or whatever, the first thing you do is what?
Freeze.
Exactly. You stop moving. You just stop in time and you start listening real hard, right? That's always first, right? If we feel after freezing, you have 2 choices, right? Number 1, you feel like, okay, there's not a threat, I can continue. Or I'm going to continue, but cautiously. I'm going to continue to look around, a little bit more heightened awareness than where I was a minute ago, right? Or that feeling of imminent threat intensifies. So if it intensifies, what is your next reaction? Get out. Run. Right? So flight is next in line. It's freeze and then flight. Get out, run away, avoid, abort, And this is why we feel oftentimes when we're going, when people want to do an audition or something like that, their first reaction isn't like to get in there and fight their way through it. Their first reaction is to not go. Turn around, walk out. I don't want to go on the stage. They kind of like back up like this. And it's because flight is second, not fight. Fight only happens once flight doesn't work. So fight happens if, again, we're in the woods. Okay, we started taking off. Something is chasing us, and you're not going to be able to outrun it. Your only option at that point is to turn around and to try to fight it off.
Right.
That's it. Right. Or just give up. So fight is next. And then the 4th step in that is fright. And fright, and we've seen this in animals all the time. We see it We see it mimicked by especially small creatures like insects. We see it all the time. When it is poked or prodded, what does it do? It just turns around and lays there and pretends like it's dead. And so the instinct is to go into a paralytic state of fright, where you mimic already being dead. Mm. And so, and we can see how we can go through those stages, and people who've experienced this may have even have been through all those stages. Freeze is really that just kind of awareness. It can also feel like you're hesitating on yourself. Mm. Flight is that feeling that your brain just wants to go anywhere else. It's where the physiological symptoms start to manifest. And now I'll go back to your question about that. So if we're in flight mode and you're in a real survival situation, the body becomes a completely different machine. Mm-hmm. All of the physiological mechanisms in the body shift their responsibilities. So we think about muscles as being things that we build from like working out or running or, doing these kinds of things, which is true. It does. However, we don't realize oftentimes that muscles have the ability to contract themselves down and then spring out into action. And we see animals do this, like deer and rabbits and stuff like that. We see them do that, but we don't realize that we also as humans can do it. And it's what gives us that ability. The adrenaline starts pumping immediately, the muscles contract, and then we spring. And that's how, anytime you've been really scared, you're like, wow, I jumped into a chair and I don't even know how I got there. Yeah. Or, like I climbed up out of that thing so fast, like I don't even know how I did that. And it has to do with that shot of adrenaline that gets released into the body, and then that contraction of muscles. Mm-hmm. So the shaky limbs, because you're not actually like leaping into, some sort of, survival mode, the muscles start to contract and we feel it happening. Mm. Normally what would happen is they would contract and immediately we would release them because we would take off and run. But you're not doing that. You're like waiting your turn, to take your test or to, exactly. So you're not doing that. And so you feel those little micro contractions like that. And what's interesting is that most people think the way to get rid of that is to try to stand still, but that actually makes it worse.
That's so interesting, because a lot of people have said that their symptoms of performance anxiety decrease when they get more into acting, right? And they act out. And I wonder if part of that is motion related, and then maybe also the mental distraction.
Sure. Yeah. I tell anybody, if you start to feel shaky limbs, shaky knees, anything like that, what you need to do is get into gross motor movement, not fine motor movement, right? Fine motor movement, small stuff that we do. When we stand and sing, that's 99% fine motor movement, right? We're dealing just with stuff, inside, internally in the mechanism, and we move, minimally on the outside. So I always tell people, stand up, do like deep knee bends, lift your knees, do jumping jacks, big arm swings, stuff like that. And big and gross motor movement will help to release the musculature tension that's building up from, your body thinking that you're going to need to spring into action. And even if somebody is in a performance or that, they're like, they've gotten on stage and they're feeling like that, I will encourage them to do things like, like reach far back on the piano, as opposed to staying really close to it like this, like reach far back, put your arms out, do a larger gesture, bend into, like lean toward one knee, anything that's going to involve the body in kind of larger, more expansive movements, to try to incorporate those as appropriate. But to do that, because if you try to stand still and try to like make yourself not be shaky, you actually make it worse. You're actually putting more tension into the body. So it's almost impossible to release. Yeah, exactly. You can't do that. You can't control it like that. The other things that happen, the digestive system shuts down because you do not need to be digesting food. And dealing with digestion when you're running for your life, right? So this is why the gastric juices in the stomach shut down and you start to feel queasy in your stomach. Wow. Particularly if you have a little bit of food in your stomach, because now it's not being digested by gastric juices anymore. It's just sitting there, and that kind of makes you feel a little ucky. That's why you get dry mouth, because the salivary glands are attached to the digestive system. And so once digestive system shuts down, so do the salivary glands. So that's why people get dry mouth. This is why people also tend to need to go to the bathroom when they get nervous. Like they're like, oh, I have to go pee. People, there's 3 ways that people can exit, things from their system, right? You can pee, you can poo, and you can barf. And, I've people tell me that they've, one of those 3 things they feel like they have to do, before they do something that's making them nervous. And it's because the body has triggered that system to eliminate anything that's going to weigh us down, right? All of those things in the body, what we carry in our bowels, what we carry in our bladder, what we carry in our stomach is just extra weight. At that point. And we certainly don't need it. So the body says, hey, get rid of that. Heart rate speeds up because it needs to pump blood and oxygen throughout all the limbs, in order to make sure that as you're running, it keeps up with, of course, you're not actually running, which is why it feels so awkward. Right? It's trying to make sure that it keeps up with you. The temperature raises because everything is moving faster in the body. Hands start to get sweaty and clammy. Feet get cold and hands get cold because as the body is pumping more blood and moving at a higher pace, it's also withdrawing the blood from the limbs. Because if you're in a survival situation, the chances of one of your limbs getting cut off first is much higher. And so your body is actually trying to save blood and make sure, trying to save blood and make sure that you don't have huge blood loss if something should cut your arm off or bite your arm off. And so the concentration of the blood in the body stays within the torso and in the head to make sure that you're getting what you need, but not out where you might lose it. And cause you to bleed out and die before you can get away. The eyesight changes because when you are running for your life, you don't need to see close up. You need to see far in the distance. You need to see where you're running to. So many times people have complained that they can't see the music anymore. Wow. They're holding music and they're like, I can't even see it. I can't see the words. I can't see what I'm doing. And that's because the eyesight has shifted to farsightedness. And anything that you're holding in front of your face is not a priority anymore. People may have noticed if they've experienced it, that they speak really quickly. So they'll start saying, oh, my name is so-and-so, I'm going to sing in such and such. Or they'll start a tempo of a piece and it'll be like twice as fast as they normally do it.
Yeah.
That's because the brain waves are actually speeding up. There's a hyperactivity in the brain also to help you think more quickly and execute decision-making more quickly.
Yeah.
Should I go over here? Should I go over there? Should I climb this tree? Should I keep running? Do I need to go in here? Should I go in that hole? So there's a reason behind every single one of the physiological symptoms that we experience. And it's all related back to that, primal instinct that we're somehow being threatened in a survival sense, and the body needs to react accordingly.
With over 20 years of performance experience and research, Dr. Kristina Driskill is an expert on performance anxiety and how the brain works. She holds a Doctor of Musical Arts degree, as well as certifications in social emotional arts, business coaching, and money mindset. She's a published author and has built a successful coaching and consulting practice, helping others identify and work through fear-based thoughts and habits. If you want to know more about her, you can check out the description below for more information, as well as links to her website and social media.